Okay, so now it's my pleasure to introduce to you Kike from Spain. He's an expert on global education and on inclusive education, and he will be presenting to you and explaining to you different concepts related to inclusive education, such as the link between stereotype, prejudice, and discrimination, privilege and oppression, and much more. Without further ado, I let Kike start.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon from Spain. And thank you, Maria, for inviting me, and thank you, everybody, for participating in this nice course. I hope it's going to be a nice afternoon. And first of all, I would like to send you a link because I want you to make a small walk through the stereotypes, prejudices, and discrimination. And this work is with some sentences that can motivate you about the subject we are going to talk about. So I send you the link. You will see some sentences, and I prefer you to take your time, about 3 minutes, something like that. And you can choose to put music. It's better to do this work with some music. You have the option. And after those 3 minutes, 4 minutes, we will continue. Okay? Eurocentrism, awareness, self-criticism, recognition and value of otherness, listening without judging, comprehensive, acceptance of complexity, confidence in change, curiosity and questioning, ability to be surprised, collaborative, responsibility in its fair measure, delve into uncertainty, accompaniment, positivity, honesty, analytical and reflective. And finally, for this part, that is more theoretical, I would like you to put one video so I can put you the link and everybody can see this 5 minutes. So it's a video of 5 minutes, and then in 5 minutes I will continue. Okay, I hope everybody has finished watching the video. It was only to show that if these people meet in the street, they would have some stereotypes, prejudices, perhaps there would be some discriminations, but when you are together, they sit together in the same room, and they look to each other, then you get closer, and then these stereotypes, these prejudices disappear, perhaps only with the person you have in front of you. You get some empathy with these people. So it's a good way to fight against these stereotypes, these prejudices, and the discrimination. I'm going to continue, and then we are in the we have talked about the stereotypes, prejudices, discriminations, and if there is discrimination, then there are people with privilege who dominate other people who are oppressed. So the privilege, there is a domination, and then oppression. But there is I think it's very clear, but there is a concept that is called intersectionality that for me is very interesting. It shows that the classic conceptualization of oppression in society, the racism, colorism, adultism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, and all prejudices based on intolerance don't act in the independent way. These forms of exclusion are interrelated. So they create a system of oppression is the intersection of multiple forms of discrimination. So this perspective forces us to reflect on the complexity of our own social positions and how our values, our experiences, and interests shape the way we understand the world, its problems, and the collectives we work with. And there is one image. I don't know if it's the first time you see this map. So we have like a lot of privilege, and they make the domination, and you have below the oppressions and the resistance. So we don't have only a privilege that dominates an oppressed person. There are a lot of privilege, then they mix together. So it's very difficult to analyze only one privilege. For example, normally the men dominate women, but if we have the color of the skin, if we have a white woman, perhaps she has a privilege with black men. So we have different combinations to see that we have to analyze in a global vision, not only certain privilege. And there are the main factors of discriminations are gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity and country of origin, health level, functional diversity, dependency situation, social class, age, but there are other factors of discrimination that is very important to analyze depending on the group we are studying. Religious beliefs, marital status, addictions, political positioning, body image, weight, height, profession. It's also necessary to take into account the structural factors that are at the base of the unequal distribution of power and privilege. Economic policies, social policies, distribution of the means of production, impact of globalization on this specific community. There is a video of only 1 minute. Perhaps it's going to give you an example and it's going to be more clear than the explanation I have given.
I think if you have finished, you can write it in the chat, but I guess everyone should have finished by now.
So it's what you can read that intersectionality allows us a change of focus and view to understand the relationship between different structure sources of inequality and to see a global look and not only to see individual privilege, oppression, etc. I don't know if it's a new concept for you. I think it's very interesting because and thanks for your attention. And I don't know if you have something we can talk about in these 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I want to really thank you a lot, Kike, both for your presentation and also for the different methods you use that I think can be helpful for many of us here to use. I don't see any question at the moment in the chat. I see a lot of thank yous, which is very nice. And because we don't have so much time, I will briefly introduce Agnes. Again, this session is thought as the most theoretical session that we're going to have. The next 2 sessions are going to be really on you to work and to draft your action plans and to discuss. But we wanted to have the theoretical basis to build on for the rest of the course. So yeah, now I'm giving the floor to Agnes. And well, I could say a lot of things about Agnes. She has collaborated with the Inclusive Schools Project and with Abesu before. but I give you the word, and feel free to start, to introduce yourself, and to do as you always do. And it will be the same as before. I will be checking the chat, and if you need anything, just write in the chat, and we will solve it.
Thank you so much for joining at this late hour. In Budapest, it's 6 o'clock. So thank you so much for being here at this time. So I would like to also briefly introduce myself. My name is Agnes, and I'm delighted to be here, and it's my honor. My background is in education and also inclusion and diversity. Myself, I have a disability. I was born with shorter arms. So inclusive education is also my passion, but I also experienced this journey as a person who went through the mainstream education and also faced some barriers. And I'm also working as a trainer in several training sessions, and I'm also delighted to invite you to have this conversation and discussion with you, because you are the educators and youth workers and young people. So it's everybody who is in the classroom or outside of the classroom in non-formal education settings. So my approach is for you just to have a little bit energizing activity at this moment, to have this reverse methodology before we dive into the details of my presentation. I also would like to have you to think about, and I also brought some reflection questions, and you will see with these reflection questions by Maria. And it is also not only for today, but also for your future activities. It's a good reflection, and I also invite you to provide your input in the chat or with the Mentimeter. I also thank you, Maria, for setting up, because it's a technical thing. So with this, with no further ado, I think so we can manage. And if there is any technical issue, Maria can help. And thank you so much.
Okay, I just prepared the technicalities. So you go to the same web page as before with Kike. It's a very similar exercise, but maybe a bit more reflective. So you can check that code, and you will find the questions. I can also share my screen now to see the answers that you start giving. And again, Agnes, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Once I also open it, so I will also see. When you have these questions, also please feel free to have this free associate thinking, and also that what comes to your mind. So it's again a little bit of refreshing activity. Now I'm also entering the space.
Now you should be able to see the screen with your answers. And so the question was, what is your current design and delivery approach for the teaching and learning environment, both formal and non-formal? And we have a flipped classroom, individual work, student-centered, considering the greatest extent of users, cognitive maps, brainstorming, structure activities, discussions, games, role games, etc., storytelling, etc., game-based sessions, context communication, task-based, needs-based, decrease barriers and increase inclusive practices, getting to know all types of diversities, cultures, and different aspects of the human being, approaching for the teaching and learning based on the educational principles of constructivism, open, form and clown theater, individual and group work, interactive teaching. I think I went to everything. Agnes, do you want me to go to the next one, or you want to comment on this?
Yes, please go to the next one, and then I will comment at the end.
Okay, if you click on next question on your phones, you should get this second question. Wait, I think I skipped the first one. This is the second, sorry. Okay, so we have okay, we're getting the answers. So some people have reflected on it, some people have not done so yet. Some people do it constantly, some people do it sometimes. Every time I control with queries, etc., the lesson, and also I reflect on my work too. Okay, we have more like lots of times, still working on it, yes, no. I try, but it's difficult to do on a regular basis. They are present in our beliefs and disappear in our convictions.
Yes, it's also coming.
I always struggle against them. Do you want to move to the next, Agnes, or we wait?
Yes, please. Yes, yes. I think so. It's a combination of everything, but yeah, this is life. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, still we will share the results of this later on. So the last one, again, if you click on next question, is what are your needs in order to move step by step towards designing inclusive educational spaces? Solutions, alliances. We have more information, practical, simple hands-on tools, time, cooperation, collaboration, methodology, tools, partners, and more knowledge. Time, teamwork, tools, class material about inclusion, support of any kind, knowledge, experience, system, training, cooperation, materials, more materials, us, PC, simple tools like stories that move. I don't know that one. I will investigate after this session. More connections, fewer biases from other teachers, trainings, experiences. We have quite a lot already. The last one is equal access of all students to tools and come together the whole educational community.
Oh, I love that. Very good, very good. So the brief structure of today is having this reverse methodology with the discussion and the reflections, which we already did. With these questions and with your input. Thank you so much. And I will also briefly comment. And we will also dive into these philosophical approaches that basically underline our activities, our language, how we view and things, and how we do the implementations of our practices in the daily life and in the daily activities in the classroom, outside of the classroom, whenever you are in non-formal education and formal education, etc. I also would like to connect with the educational models, which I also have been researching, and this is also could be a very practical thing for you to use in terms of working towards more inclusive education. And I also brought you some top tips. So when you continue this program with OBESU, you can also look back at those tips and you can consider whether they are useful to you. And I also brought some readings. So this happened. So on this slide, you can also see these questions. And I also wanted to just reflect that amazing that you already highlighted so many good methodologies. Also that what are the difficulties. I also know that there are enablers and also barriers in terms of starting on this journey, on this inclusion journey. And of course, you also mentioned those biases, which are not, which are with us, and we need to also train our mind to be more conscious about it, and also discuss and what are the disabling factors. And I purposefully use this word disabling factors because usually you hear this word when it's reflected to people. But I also wanted to make a different approach and saying that what are the barriers in curriculum or in educational spaces? What are the disabling factors of these classroom experiences, which are creating barriers for the diversity of your classroom, whatever students or young people you have. And I also wanted to highlight this element that it's kind of we should see the diversity as a default and also see it as a potential rather than a burden. And we will come back to the solutions. I will also share with you a few, but you already nicely highlighted that knowledge, tools, simple ways, and also easy to apply, easy to apply or implement tools as well. I also brought you a long text. Don't worry about the long text. It's a text from the Erasmus program guide, which is a very technical document, very non-accessible, very difficult to read. But I also wanted to highlight just one word, and maybe I can also just read it loud so you can have a sense. The Erasmus program aims at promoting equity and inclusion by facilitating the access to participants with disadvantaged backgrounds and fewer opportunities compared to their peers whenever disadvantage limits or prevents participation. And then there is a list of different backgrounds and circumstances. And now I immediately don't want to worry about this long text, but again, just highlight whenever disadvantage limits or prevents participation. And basically, I also would like to highlight that keep this sentence with this red color in mind, because what I would like to do with you, and again is a little bit practical element here to again understand and reflect and interpret what texts are bringing us, is that I also would like to today talk about the paradigm shifts and the approaches. And I also brought these models from the field of disability, but I absolutely agree and believe that these approaches are very universal, whether we are talking about other groups or other underrepresented groups. Because basically, the model here is that during our history, during our society, whenever different people we experienced, or diversity we experienced, or people who were not fit to the society, we always looked at that the problem is within the person, and this problem should be eliminated, or this should be fixed, or this should be dismissed. And of course, now you are also seeing the example from the disability field, because it's quite like hands-on, but you can also think about like sexual orientation or other elements, or gender or other elements, that the focus is on this problem, on this thing, and it's very internalized in the person, and that we are looking at the problem in the individual. And this has been an issue during our society from the ancient times until the medieval times, and also even the 21st century. And And you can also see a change in paradigm and in looking at people from the Second World War or after the Second World War, where the civil rights movement have been emerged and a more human rights-based approach model started. And after this time, the question was that, okay, there are the diversity of people in our society. Let's rethink about, and you already used the word deconstruction in your Mentimeter. So let's deconstruct and let's look at with a different approach. What is the problem within the society? So what are the problems that are creating barriers for people with disabilities, but also, as I mentioned, people with different backgrounds, circumstances, and lived own experiences? And this is, again, a shift, a paradigm shift, that we are not only looking on the difficulty or the problem within the person, but in the society. And I also brought you a very clear message here for you, which is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. But this approach, again, very easily tells that what is the change of things here. And I also highlighted. So there are, of course, these physical and biological circumstances that people have. It's the physiobiological circumstances. But what is very important here is that this sentence following the social model, which means that these are in interactions with various barriers that may hinder their full and effective participation in society. So this Article 1 is really connecting the barriers in society, whether it's an inaccessible website, or it's an inaccessible transportation, or it's an inaccessible curriculum. And I also would like to go back again with this Erasmus sentence, and I'm very delighted to feedback to the European Commission this, because I had the honor to work with them as an external advisor, that unfortunately still the Erasmus guide is, I mean, they are very good intentions, very nice. I'm very honored that they are focusing on the inclusion and equity, but probably the sentence when they were formulating this, they were not necessarily looking into the paradigms, and they still using this, I would call, medical approach, that they again put the burden on the variety of circumstances of the people. And that's why when I went again back to my question was again very, very purposefully that what are the disabling barriers in the educational spaces? So I put the emphasis on the society and on the educational spaces. So I also wanted to highlight this for you, because it's the basis of everything, how we approach things, and after how we deliver our activities and also use our practices in the classroom. And I also will take time for questions at the end. All right. So basically, now we already know about the social model, but also I wanted to highlight that in the 20th century, of course, there was the realization that there is the environment that it puts barriers for people, but the human rights-based approach model also says that it relies on the social model and puts an additional step, which is this legal consequences. So now again, there is a discrimination to have a non-accessible website, or there is legal consequences whenever it's violation of violation of rights of persons. And of course, I highlighted the universal declarations on human rights, and you already know many of the related conventions in the UN. So again, I just highlighted that reflection on the discrimination, reflection on the circumstances, and again, making a step more and having a so-called legal consequences. I know that we cannot be every day in court, and we cannot, how to say, be there, because it's a long issue. But there are, like, for example, during the COVID-19, there were also many cases where, for example, even with masks, there were difficulties for people who had hearing loss, or that they could not access information. So there are also legal aspects to that, and this is like a very a rights-based approach model as well. All right. I also put a brief introduction to the program, like not the program, sorry, the approach by the European Youth Forum. It's very easy and very easy to understand for young people, for all kinds of stakeholders, what are human rights. Good. Yes. And now I also want to share with you the future. And it is my also honor to work in this area, because when I was researching and when I was also working with young people in trainings and in several things, we realized that, again, according to the social and human rights-based approach model, that the barriers are within the society and not necessarily in the people itself. And this little picture here shows this thing that what I've already highlighted to you, that we are looking at the benches, how to support people's participation in games, in educational spaces, and whether somebody is facing barriers, we can increase the benches according to the circumstances. But we don't realize that actually the real problem is the fence in front of the people, the diversity of people here. And this fence is really symbolizing for us the social barriers, the systematic barriers. And on the third picture, you already see that regardless of backgrounds, regardless of circumstances, there is a way to see the soccer game, there is a way to participate in education. And we just need to realize that what is the barrier. And to be honest, and it's a fact, that at the moment in our societies, in Western Europe, in Central Eastern Europe, and also in the globe, the most common feature is that we are creating the system which is supporting people's participation, but with an additional support. So it means that we are fixing the inaccessibility right now, but we are not designing from the 0 point. So it's like also trying to fix the system, but we are not thinking about removing the system. So yes. And I also brought in the left corner of the slide, you only see the literature references and also the approaches. And I also brought you a video, which I will also share with you in a link about universal design for learning. And it basically says that universal design is providing a space and environment which caters the needs of the greatest extent of users, whether it's non-native English speakers, whether it's people who are having like socioeconomic circumstances, lower socioeconomic circumstances, or disability, or all kinds of things, international students, all kinds of things. And what is also important here is that you are creating multiple ways of representations, multiple ways of expressions. For example, now I'm expressing myself with my voice, but I can also add a subtitle. I can also make visual things because everybody is learning differently. It's like our fingerprints. So everybody consumes information in a different way, and we need to capture this. And I also wanted to highlight for you that please don't get caught in this differentiation topics, because universal design is really providing this open menu with all kinds of multiple means of expressions, multiple means of engagement of young people and students, so providing more ways to engage. And I also wanted to highlight that basically this is a step forward for the future, because now it's like a step by step, but we can, with an inclusive mindset and with a more open mindset, we can really move towards it, and also use the existing tools, the existing knowledge by professionals and supporters and educators. Really, as you saw, that it's bringing together the community, bringing together the different stakeholders, young people, educators, like those staff who are supporting the teachers, because everybody can support each other, and it is very, very important. So I will also send you later the link, but the main information is this little picture here that is really taking away the fence. All right. Last but not least, before we move to the questions and answer time, I also wanted to highlight for you 10 tips, which you can also consider, and you can also look at in your practices how you work on this. So co-creation is a very fancy word, but I also would like to highlight that it's a very meaningful word, because it's takes a lot of energy to co-create, and it takes also a lot of inclusive mindset to co-create, which again means that we are bringing together young people, people with different lived experiences, and also creating a space and also creating space for empowerment, that they are like a meaningful way part of this whole design approach and the delivery and the monitoring. And to be honest, I also experienced that in governance and representation areas, it's also not necessarily always happens. But again, we need to step by step approach this. Also, this co-creation is like a learning. We are learning how to involve students, how we involve young people. And for example, Obesu is the best example for that, because they are bringing young people, they are present in schools, they are present in volunteering, they want to include them, and in a meaningful way, which is super important. All right. The next point is creating a safe spaces for disclosure. Kike already mentioned briefly, if I remember correctly, disclosure in a sense that we have different circumstances. We also have invisible and visible circumstances, whether you are pregnant or whether you have a disability, or whether you have a depression. And I also saw the text. Yes, I will share definitely this information for you. It's absolutely yours. Please always quote me on that, but yes, it's for you. So people have different circumstances which they have the right and the choice to disclose. It is not forcible. So for example, in my case, I have shorter arms, so it's a visible thing. But when people have like invisible things, you cannot force them to disclose. This is the right word. And as institutions and as non-governmental organizations, NGOs, youth groups, classrooms, what we can do is, again, take a step and create a welcoming and safe space with language. You can do already with the little questions about asking your participants how they feel included in your spaces, etc. So little questions, and I can also share with this little question some examples for you. Confidentiality and data protection is a very important thing. I don't want to take your time to explain it. Like protected features of people, or protected, like this is the legal term, protected features, if you look at this non-discrimination legislation in Europe. So the protected features are enjoying data protection and confidentiality, and it's also that it's not a public information, so you need to be very careful and follow protocols, how you protect those information. Conducting a needs assessment is really a simple way of learning about your audience, your students, your young people, and just as a way that what is your access needs in terms of how you say it, time, energy, smoking, sleeping. It's all kinds of needs, and it is really taking an approach that everybody has needs. And why I'm purposefully using access needs is that I argue with special needs. So it's also a disclaimer for you, but there are also very wonderful literature on that. All right. Welcoming and safe space in the inclusive classroom atmosphere. It's again how you start your classroom, how you introduce your topic, you include young people, and also create this happy and welcoming space. This atmosphere is really takes on the person. So you can also train a lot, but this also could be a very personal thing. But there is also tools how you make it and what elements you include in your facilitation, etc. Now comes to the facilitation. And when I say inclusive facilitation, I also highlight that it is really how you imbalance or balance power relations, like Kike was also highlighting a bit of these powers, oppression, and empowerment, and all these things, and also trying again to consciously reflect on the biases we have. And it's a long journey, but more and more, year by year, day by day, you can really work on this. And once you are full with a classroom of all kinds of people, they will let you know that it is not okay, it is hurting, etc., etc. So having the real people in your classroom and having their feedback, what is okay or what is not okay, it's absolutely important. Variety of teaching methods, I've already highlighted UDL. There are the guidelines, you can absolutely access it. And there are also ways of teaching materials. And I also put a nice picture here with a book cover that it says, let me see, Are All Welcome. And it's a children's book, or like for young people, or like the elementary, secondary education, but it can be very universally used. And again, this is how you diversify your teaching materials, how young people are seeing the reflections in their books or in your language, in your pictures. What pictures do you use in showing certain things? So it's step by step how you can do this. And last but not least, since some of you are probably also from this formal education settings where there are a lot of assessment, I also would like to invite you to look at the literature, and also my doctoral thesis was also focusing on inclusive assessment, which again deconstructing these social norms, like deconstructing the old-fashioned ways and offers an equitable way of assessing, and also creating a space for young people to express their knowledge in multiple ways, which is again in combination with the UDL guidelines. I also brought you a nice video. This is an etiquette, and you can also read it or check it out later. It's really, really nice that simple questions, how you ask people, do you need the help or do you need a hand, or trying to not forcingly support the person if they don't want to. I mean, these are also stereotypes that we are facing in streets, where somebody wants to help a blind person and wants to help through the crossroad, but the person wants to go to the different road. So it's again thinking about whether you ask, how nicely you can ask, etc., etc. And these are my readings. And I also, hopefully, let me see the time, if Maria is the boss, so she can confirm that we have still 10 minutes to have a, like, I don't know, chat or discussion.
On the, yeah, well, you already managed. So I will now, participants, you can unmute yourselves. We've kept you muted for a very long time, but we hope it was useful for you. Now, if you have a question, you can raise your hand and unmute yourself, or if there are not many people that want to speak at the same time, you can just unmute yourself and ask the question. Or if you prefer to use the chat, feel free to do so. So yeah, raising your hand, using the chat, unmuting yourself. You can make either a question or another comment. We have a question which is, how can we reach your PhD thesis, Agnes?
Thank you. It's very kind of you. I put in the presentation, and you can have the abstract, like the short version of the whole thing in English, so it's also accessible through English.
Thanks for your interesting position reflecting the universal education model. Are all these ideas refer to informal education too?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Maria knows me, and she knows that I'm a person in between formal education and non-formal education, and also you call it, or like you are referring to, informal education. Yes, so the principles are the same. You just need to adapt your environment, like the formal to non-formal or informal. But how you engage young people, it's absolutely, you are following these principles. And really, this creating a space where you're trying to do everything to the greatest extent of users. And what is also important, I wanted to highlight, is that I always do mistakes. I mean, I'm researching all these things on my whole life, but it's like I'm doing a lot of mistakes. But reflecting on mistakes and asking your participants, is it okay, or did I do something wrong or something? So again, putting your heart on the floor, and I mean, it's also vulnerability, but it also creates a more inclusive environment, because they also feel that you want to do something right and more inclusive.
Well, hi, I'm Kari. I just wanted to say that it was a pleasure to attend this training. I already know Agnes from the Enable course that we did in June, I think, and it was also amazing. So just say that thank you so much for bringing all these amazing concepts and these amazing just learning. And it was really, really a pleasure to attend today's training, and thank you.
You. And I'm very glad that you came back. It was in summer, and now you are back in autumn. Thank you. I mean, if I may add, just to really efficiently use the time, people ask me either in like trainers in a non-formal education, or also educators in formal education from me. They are asking that, oh, it's so overwhelming. I mean, it's an extra burden. And I say, yes, it is an extra burden, but imagine this is a transition time. So, which means that whenever you take, like I also took in my, because I also teach at the university, I also took like a summer to reevaluate my teaching elements, discuss with young people and students, and took the time to like shift it from the barriers and remove the barriers as much as possible. And it took me like time, but afterwards it's like really like a smooth experience. And what I also can share with you, that it is time, but once we did this transition, we can really focus on these next steps. And also it is also a professional development phase where you really take the time. Like some people say, it's a, how you say, it's a sabbatical. It's like a research sabbatical when you focus on your things, and you can also focus on your things, not only doing the research but creating and your practice is inclusive. And last but not least, what I can also share with you, that it is really making the whole difference for your young people. You can see the smile, you can see the more inclusive feeling, the sense of belonging for them. And what I also realized, that whenever I had a classroom, not everybody was, I mean, I also just created an open space for disclosure, but I also didn't want to enforce anybody. But after, and I also created like a little video with subtitles, with a transcript. So I basically provided multiple means of representation of information. And the classroom was like, the course was okay. We finished the course. And one student came to me back and she said, thank you so much, because I didn't disclose it, but I have a dyslexia and I felt the fear of discrimination and mistreatment, but I didn't need it to disclose it because you already did it with transcripts and all these things. And it was just a rewarding feeling, you know. It was like, wow. And I was so happy. So it was like sleepless nights of creating this content, right? But this rewarding is like million times. So yes.
Agnes, first of all, I want to thank you again and a lot from Obesu's side and from the Inclusive Schools Project side. Once again, I think Kike is not here anymore, but to thank him again. It has been a very interesting session for me, and I hope that for the participants it was very interesting too. Yeah, I think that's it for today. Again, thank you. See you next Monday, and have a very nice evening, everyone.